Hello everyone, this is Tyler King with a new episode of NuReview. Today I'm going to be doing a review of Depeche Mode's album Music for the Masses. Yay. Music for the Masses is Depeche Mode's sixth studio album. It is released on September 28th, 1987. This is an album that is co-produced by David Bascombe, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, as well as longtime Depeche Mode producer Daniel Miller. Now this album, like the four immediately before it, is written really by Martin Gore. Um, the lineup is Martin and Alan Wilder handling the bulk of the instrumentation, as well as Martin singing lead on a few songs. Otherwise, lead vocal duties are going to be handled by frontman Dave Gaughan. And Andrew Fletcher does, I don't know, he does something on here. I have no fucking idea. Now, Music for the Masses is released following their album Black Celebration. And Black Celebration was a continuation of their album Some Great Reward, which really kind of started to introduce a darker element into the band's sound, and I think Black Celebration kind of was the culmination of that. With Music for the Masses, Depeche Mode goes with a more stripped and bare approach to their music. The album, though, does open up with, I believe it was the second single released from it, and it's arguably the most famous song here, Never Let Me Down Again. There's no gradual build-up in the song like there was on the opening track of Black Celebration, which was actually the song Black Celebration. Instead, here the song just opens up with a very catchy synthesizer lead before this whole jumble of electronic instrumentation joins in. The lyrics are, like most of Martin Gore's lyrics at the time, vaguely sexual. They're not overtly so. Lines like, promises me I'm safe as houses as long as I remember who's wearing the trousers, are weird. Yeah, they don't make a lot of sense, but they evoke some kind of imagery, which I think is what they're going for on this song. There's not really too much of a point to it as far as a narrative, coherent kind of way, but it definitely evokes an emotion. There is also a very soft and sweet piano line that is played before the choruses, which I think is really great juxtaposition against the more busy electronic instrumentation that's going on underneath everything. And after the second chorus, a little after 3 minutes into the song, we get these very powerful choir synths coming in, which really gives the song that much more of an epic and themic feeling to it. And after that, as Dave continually sings the title of the song, Never Let Me Down Again, Martin is singing these backup vocals of See the Stars, They're Shining Bright, Everything's Alright Tonight. And that moment, to me, not only is it one of my favorite moments on the song, it's also one of my favorite moments on this entire record. Now, transitioning from Never Let Me Down, we have The Things You Said, which is a complete 180-degree turn from the upbeat, driving opening number. Opening with a very simple bass line and a very simple single drum kick. This song is a lot more atmospheric and bare, and the lead vocals this time around are actually going to be sung by Martin Gore. Now, the song lyrically sees Martin confronting somebody because he heard it from his friends about things they said. Unfortunately, the song doesn't really do too much for me. There's not really much going on, which is fine. I love Depeche Mode songs where there's not much going on. Songs like Waiting for the Night or Somebody. But, this is kind of like, yeah, I heard that you were talking shit, but Martin's reaction is just kind of like, oh well, I don't care. And it's just anticlimactic. There's no real build up, and there's no real payoff on this song. The next song is Strangelove, which was another single from the album. It's going to be a bit more upbeat, like Never Let Me Down Again, but like the things you said, this song really doesn't do too much for me, even though I know it's a very popular Depeche Mode song, just it's never really done that much for me. Dave is singing I Give In to Sin, and it's much less believable than when he sang something like Master and Servant, 3 or 4 years before this. Personally, I think that my biggest issue with this song is that the lyrics are dealing with BDSM similarly to Master and Servant, although in a more straightforward way, but the instrumentation is just so upbeat and stupid sounding that it just completely neuters any power that this song, I think, should have. And next we have Sacred, which is another slower song in the same vein as The Things You Said. Here we have both Martin and Dave singing the intro of the song, which always is a good thing to hear. The song, I think, is a little more strong and memorable than the previous two, but there are moments in the instrumentation that I think are a little bit amateurish and almost demo sounding in quality, which is a complaint that I have actually with most of the songs that are on this album. Lyrically, the song kind of deals with the themes of God and sex and the juxtaposition of the two. And that lyrical theme really is one that Martin Gore has explored throughout his entire career as the songwriter for Depeche Mode. It's a lyrical theme that I personally feel kind of came to a head and reached its logical conclusion with the album Songs of Faith and Devotion. Um, Although I will say it is pretty fun to hear Dave Gahan say that he's a warm receiver. And then we have Little 15, which is without a doubt the worst single that Depeche Mode has ever released, and without a doubt is the worst song on this album. Instrumentally, there's not much going on besides these cheesy synth strings and this piano and choir effect that comes in as the song goes on. The song, to me, is just boring. It goes absolutely nowhere. There's no payoff or anything. Lyrically, I think it's just stupid. It's one of my least favorite Depeche Mode songs, I think, ever. And that kind of like last swell at the end, that like, oh, kind of thing. I mean, it just makes me dislike it that much more. Now, the second side opens incredibly strongly with Behind the Wheel, and I think that Behind the Wheel stands with some of the best songs that Depeche Mode has ever made. The song opens with what sounds like a wheel or a hubcap spinning and then falling. The song then turns into this very tense exercise of kick drum and synth bass instrumentation with occasional guitar flourishes going on throughout it. Again, we have Dave and Martin singing together, and the song really picks up as they sing, "Oh little girl, there are times where I feel I would rather not be the one behind the wheel." And both this song and Never Let Me Down Again share this lyrical theme of kind of being a passenger as just metaphor for not being in full control or willingly giving up control to somebody else. But for me at least, Behind the Wheel is a little bit more atmospheric, and it's a little bit more memorable of a song than Never Let Me Down Again, which isn't to say Never Let Me Down Again is not a great song, because it is, but I would say that Behind the Wheel is probably the single best song on this entire record. And then we have I Want You Now, which is a very simple, pervy song sung by Martin, which utilizes kind of sharp breathing and moaning as an instrument. I think that this is kind of the counterpoint to their song Somebody. Somebody was very loving and slower, and I Want You Now is just kind of dumb and pervy, and Martin doesn't want to sound like one of the boys, but he just wants you now. And despite the fact that it's not a complicated song by any stretch of the imagination, this kind of is my guilty pleasure song on the album. You know, I know that I said that the song Strangelove is stupid. I Want You Now is very stupid, but this is one of my favorite songs on the album. And next we have To Have and To Hold, which is a very interesting song by Depeche Mode. It opens up with some spoken word samples before a very simple kick drum comes in, which is then met with this very swirling synthesizer instrumentation. The song does still deal with themes of religion and sex, but the murkiness of this instrumentation, I mean, this is probably the most atmospheric and murky and like dirty sounding song on the album. And I think that the instrumentation really matches perfectly with lyrics like Although I May Flirt with All Kinds of Dirt to the Point of Disease, Now I Want Release. The lyrics are delivered in this very straightforward single verse, almost like Martin had to get these lyrics out as quickly as he could. And there's this feeling of desperation on this song that is needed, I think, on some of the other songs here. And it reminds me a lot of some of the darker moments from the band's Black Celebration album. And then next we have Nothing, and it's a more straightforward song. There's lots of synth bass, and it's probably the fastest song on side B. Unfortunately, after the string of the last few songs, I think that Nothing is a little bit underwhelming in the same way that The Things You Said is underwhelming. The attitude of this one as well is just kind of one of, whatever. There's no fight in the lyrics, despite the more upbeat tempo, and it just kind of exists for the better part of 4 minutes without really leaving that much of an impression on me. And the last song is Pimpf, and Pimpf is a pretty much entirely instrumental song. It opens with piano. As the song goes on, it is met with percussion as well as some synthesizers. And Pimpf does remind me of a couple of B-sides that they would do for the Violator album, Sibling and Memphisto, although I don't think that Pimpf is as memorable as either one. As the song goes on, we're met with these cries of like, ho and oh, which I think are more comical than anything else. And they really deflate the song of any kind of seriousness that it had up to that point. And then there's this stupid little hidden track a couple of minutes into it that just sounds like them dicking around in the studio, and it's absolutely stupid, it's absolutely useless, and that's the end of music for The Masses by Depeche Mode. Now, as you can tell by my review, this is not my favorite Depeche Mode album. In fact, it probably is going to be in my bottom 5 or 6 Depeche Mode albums. It's definitely, I think this and their debut, Speak and Spell, are the 2 albums of theirs from the 80s that I listen to the least often. Which is weird considering that this is the album really that helped to launch them into the mainstream, especially here in the United States. Granted, all that would come to a head with the release of Violator, especially when they were, there was a signing in Hollywood that had to be canceled and they turned into a riot. But Music for the Masses, and as well as their 101 live album, which was culled from the tour of this, really did help the band to get international acclaim. So in that regard, I like the album. In terms of music and the songs and the content, I really don't like the album. It has some great moments on it, Never Let Me Down, To Have and to Hold, Behind the Wheel, but for me at least, the bad far outweighs the good. And it's weird because I feel like they took a step backward with this album. If you listen to Black Celebration and then you listen to the album Violator, I think that Violator sounds more of a continuation of the sound that they were exploring on Black Celebration than this one does. This is I just don't feel the same heart and emotion in it as I feel on their better albums. I mean, even something like A Broken Frame or Construction Time Again, I think is a more memorable, fully accomplished album than Music for the Masses is. I think that there's just too much that they're trying to do. There are too many different moods on it that they're trying to evoke. Some of them they do well, other ones not so well. Just unfortunately, it's just not. I know it's an album a lot of people enjoy, and I wish I could enjoy it that same way, but I can't. Um, it's just so hodgepodge to me, and it just feels almost like a bunch of demos. I think that if this had just been an EP of the better moments on this album, it would have been a very strong EP, but as it stands, it's a very schizophrenic, ill-conceived album. Favorites on it are going to be Never Let Me Down Again, Behind the Wheel, and I Want You Now, and I would say also To Have and to Hold. Least favorites are going to be Little 15, Pimpf, and I would say Strangelove. I just wish that there was more on this album that I liked. And there's an argument that people make for Depeche Mode saying that they're a singles band and that they don't have very good album tracks. And with something like Violator or Songs of Faith and Devotion or Black Celebration or Some Great Reward, you can make the argument that they are not a singles band. That yes, the singles are good, but the album tracks are just as good. On Music for the Masses, this album I think would prove the point of them being a singles band, because Behind the Wheel and Never Let Me Down Again really are the two best moments on this song, and most everything else just kind of flies by without leaving much of an impression at all. And so I really want to give this album a better rating. It's not quite a 5. It's more like a very low 6 out of 10 for me. I don't go back to it very often, and when I do, it's really just to hear the songs that I like, because I don't want to hear Little 15 ever again for the rest of my life. Yeah, that's my review of Music for the Masses. So what do you think? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you agree? Do you disagree? You probably disagree. I know a lot of people really like this album. Don't know why. But leave any and all comments in the comment box below. I will get more reviews up as soon as I can, and in the meantime, this is Tyler King with NuReview, Music for the Masses by Depeche Mode, 6 out of 10. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.